I never thought I'd be the kind of man who had to warn his own wife about another man. But the night she grabbed her purse and told me she was just going out for some air, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't asking for permission. She wasn't looking for reassurance. She had already decided. And no matter how many red flags I pointed out, she walked straight past every single one. I've been married to my wife, Laura, for 12 years. We're both in our late 30s, with 2 kids, a mortgage, and what I thought was a stable life. Not perfect, but steady. Predictable, safe. Looking back now, I understand why people say affairs don't start with passion, they start with distance. Ours didn't explode overnight. It eroded quietly. Laura used to talk to me about everything. Work frustrations, random thoughts, even things that annoyed her about me. But about a year ago, those conversations slowly dried up. She became selective, guarded. At first, I blamed stress. She had just switched departments at work, new responsibilities, new coworkers, long hours. I told myself this was normal, that marriages go through seasons. But then the phone became an extension of her hand. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter. Now it was always face down, always locked, always buzzing with messages she'd glance at and quickly swipe away. I asked her once, lightly, "Everything okay?" She smiled without warmth and said, "Yeah, just work stuff." That word just would come back to haunt me. The man's name was Daniel. I didn't know it at first. I just knew someone had taken up space in my wife's mind that used to belong to me. She started mentioning a coworker who really understood her, someone who actually listened, someone who didn't make her feel invisible. I should have recognized that language immediately. But denial is a powerful thing when the truth threatens your entire life. The first time I heard his name, it sounded harmless. "Daniel helped me with that report today," she said over dinner. I nodded. "That's good." Then it became, "Daniel stayed late too." Then, "Daniel thinks my boss is clueless." Then, "Daniel says I deserve better." That last one stuck with me. I laughed it off, but something cold settled in my chest. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started watching. Laura began dressing differently for work. Nothing inappropriate, just intentional. New perfume. Clothes she hadn't worn in years. Makeup she claimed she didn't have time for before. She stayed later and later. Our intimacy faded, replaced by excuses, headaches, exhaustion. "Can we talk tomorrow?" Tomorrow never came. I felt like a stranger in my own home, watching my wife drift somewhere I wasn't invited. The night everything shifted was a Thursday. She came home late, unusually upbeat, humming, smiling at her phone. I asked how work was. She hesitated just a fraction, then said, "Fine. Not good, not busy, just fine." Later that night, after the kids were asleep, she sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through messages, smiling to herself. I asked, "Who are you talking to?" She didn't look up. "Daniel." My stomach dropped. "About work?" I asked. She paused, then said, "Mostly. May after due is in dollars." That word again. A few days later, she dropped the bomb casually, like it meant nothing. "Daniel and I are going to grab a drink after work tomorrow." I looked at her. "Just the two of you?" She shrugged. "Yeah, what's the problem?" That was the moment I knew. I didn't accuse her. I didn't yell. I didn't panic. I told her calmly, "That's a bad idea." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "I'm being honest." She crossed her arms. "So now I'm not allowed to have friends?" I chose my words carefully. "I'm not saying that. I'm saying this situation has red flags all over it." She laughed, actually laughed, and shook her head. "You're insecure," she said. "That's your issue, not mine." That hurt more than I expected. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed every conversation, every glance, every excuse, every moment I ignored because facing it felt harder than pretending. The next morning, I tried again. I told her I felt uncomfortable, that emotional lines were already being crossed, that one-on-one drinks with someone she was emotionally close to wasn't harmless. I said, "If you respect our marriage, you'll reconsider." She grabbed her keys. "I'm going," she said, "and I'm tired of being controlled." That word "controlled" felt like a knife. As she walked out the door, she didn't look back. And that's when I realized something worse than the affair itself. She had already chosen him. I spent that entire day distracted. At work, my emails blurred together. Meetings came and went. My phone stayed face up on my desk, like I was waiting for a message that would either calm me down or confirm what I already knew. Laura didn't text me once. Normally, she'd check in around lunch, a quick busy day or a meme or something about the kids. That day, nothing. By mid-afternoon, the knot in my stomach had tightened into something sharp and constant. I kept replaying her words from that morning. You're insecure. That's your issue. I'd never felt insecure in our marriage before. Concerned? Yes. Hurt? Sometimes. But insecure? That was new. And the fact that she dismissed me so easily told me more than she probably intended. When I got home, the house felt quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. The kids were still at after-school activities, and Laura wasn't back yet. Her car wasn't in the driveway. I checked the clock, 5:47 p.m. I knew exactly where she was. I tried to distract myself by making dinner. Something simple, pasta. I didn't have much of an appetite anyway. At 6:30, my phone buzzed. Running late. Don't wait up. That was it. No explanation. No reassurance. No acknowledgement of the conversation we'd had that morning. Just a statement. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Okay. Please drive safe. She didn't respond. The kids came home around 7:15, loud and hungry and blissfully unaware that their parents' marriage was cracking beneath the surface. I smiled. I helped with homework. I listened to stories about school and friends. I tucked them in and read like everything was normal. But the moment I closed their bedroom doors, the weight came crashing back down. I sat on the couch in the dark, the TV on but muted, checking the time every few minutes. 8:30, 9:15, 10. No Laura. I told myself she was just talking, just venting, just having a drink. But the truth was, I didn't believe that anymore. She finally walked through the door at 10:47 p.m. She smelled like that new perfume. Her cheeks were flushed, not drunk but energized, alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. Hey, she said casually, kicking off her shoes. Hey, I replied, keeping my voice steady. She hung up her coat and walked into the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water like nothing was out of place. How was it? I asked. She paused. Just long enough to be noticeable. Fine, she said again. There it was. That word. Always vague. Always deflecting. I stood up. Did you have a good time? She sighed. Yes, I did. With Daniel. Yes. There was no guilt in her voice, no hesitation, just honesty, cold and unapologetic. I took a breath. Did you talk about us? Her eyes flicked to mine. Why? Because I want to know. She leaned against the counter. We talked about life, work, stress, stuff. Did you complain about me? Her jaw tightened. I'm allowed to talk about my feelings. That's not what I asked. She straightened up. I'm not doing this. I'm tired. She turned to walk past me. I stopped her, not physically, just with words. Laura, I said quietly, this is how affairs start. She spun around. Oh my God, stop. I'm serious. So am I, she snapped. You're projecting your fears onto me. I looked at her and said something I've been holding back all day. If nothing is wrong, then why does this feel like you're already gone? She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said, because maybe I am. That sentence landed harder than any accusation could have. I felt my chest tighten. What does that mean? It means, she said slowly, I'm tired of feeling like the bad guy for wanting more. More than what? More than routine. More than being taken for granted. I laughed bitterly. Taken for granted? I've been trying to talk to you for months. Talking isn't listening, she shot back. Daniel listens. There it was, the comparison I'd been dreading. I didn't yell. I didn't slam anything. I just asked one question. Are you emotionally involved with him? She looked away. That was all the answer I needed. Laura, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, this isn't harmless anymore. She crossed her arms. Nothing has happened. Yet, I said. She looked back at me, eyes hard. You don't trust me. I'm trying to, I said, but you're making it impossible. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, I'm going to bed. And just like that, the conversation was over. That night, she slept facing away from me. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, wondering how two people could lie inches apart and feel so far away. I thought about all the warnings I'd given her, all the chances she'd had to step back. She ignored every one. The next few weeks followed a pattern that felt cruel in its predictability. She went out with Daniel again, and again. Sometimes it was group drinks, sometimes it was just coffee, sometimes it was work stuff. Each time, I raised concerns. Each time, she dismissed them. She started locking her phone even at home, taking calls in another room, smiling at messages she wouldn't explain. When I asked her to stop seeing him one-on-one, she accused me of being controlling. When I asked her to set boundaries, she said I was paranoid. When I asked her if she still wanted to be married, she said, "I don't know." That answer hurt worse than a yes or a no. One night, after another argument, I told her plainly, "You're playing with fire." She looked at me and said, "Maybe I want to feel something again." That was the moment I realized she wasn't just ignoring the red flags. She was drawn to them. I started keeping track, not obsessively, but enough to notice patterns. Late nights always lined up with his schedule. Her mood depended on whether she'd seen him that day. On days he was off, she was irritable. On days she saw him, she was lighter, happier. It was like watching someone fall in love in slow motion, and I was powerless to stop it. The breaking point came on a Friday. She told me she was going out again. This time, she didn't even pretend it was for work. "Daniel's having a rough week," she said while putting on her jacket. "He needs a friend." I stared at her. "And what about me?" She hesitated. "I can't be everything for you right now." I felt something inside me harden. "Then maybe you shouldn't be going," I said. She sighed, exasperated. "I'm not canceling my plans." "Laura," I said, "if you walk out that door again, something is going to change." She paused, hand on the handle. "Is that a threat?" "No," I said quietly. "It's a boundary." She looked at me, searching my face. "For what? I don't know." Then she opened the door and left. I sat alone in the living room long after she was gone. This time, I didn't wait up. I already knew whatever was happening between them had crossed into territory she couldn't come back from without consequences. And I realized something else that night. If she was willing to risk our marriage for him, then I needed to prepare for what came next. The night Laura walked out after I warned her something would change, I didn't sleep. Not because I was waiting for her, but because, for the first time, I accepted the truth I'd been circling for weeks. She wasn't confused. She wasn't naive. She wasn't unaware of what she was doing. She was choosing him over and over while convincing herself she was still a good wife. And that realization shifted something inside me. She came home just after midnight. I heard the front door open, then close quietly. She thought I was asleep. I lay there in the dark, eyes open, listening to her footsteps as she moved around the house. She didn't come to bed right away. Instead, she sat on the couch, and she called him. I know because her voice carried down the hallway, soft, intimate, the voice she used to reserve for me. I didn't hear every word, but I heard enough. "I know I miss you too." That was all it took. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, staring at the doorway like it might swallow me whole. There was no misinterpretation left, no gray area, no benefit of the doubt. My wife was emotionally invested in another man. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, packed lunches, kissed the kids on the head, asked me if I wanted eggs. I looked at her and wondered how someone could live in two realities at once. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked. "No," I said. She nodded like she already knew the answer. That day, I did something I'm not proud of, but I don't regret it either. I checked our phone bill. I wasn't looking for messages or explicit proof. I just wanted confirmation that my instincts weren't lying to me. The call logs told the story clearly. Dozens of calls, late at night, early mornings, during work hours, sometimes for over an hour, almost every day. His number was burned into my memory by the end of it. That evening, I didn't confront her right away. I waited until the kids were asleep, until the house was quiet, until there were no distractions left. She was folding laundry on the couch when I sat across from her. "We need to talk," I said. She stiffened. "About what?" "You know what." She sighed, setting the laundry aside. "I'm really tired of having the same conversation." "This isn't the same conversation," I said. "This is the last one before things change permanently." That got her attention. I slid my phone across the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Our call log," I said. "Your call log." She didn't touch it. "You've been talking to him every day," I continued, "for hours, at night, while I'm asleep, while our kids are home." Her jaw clenched. "So you're spying on me now?" "No," I said. "I'm paying attention." She stood up. "This is ridiculous." I stood too. "Then explain it." She crossed her arms. "He's my friend." "Friends don't hide," I said. "Friends don't replace their spouse emotionally." She shook her head. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I felt anger rise, but I kept my voice steady. "Are you in love with him?" She didn't answer. "Laura." Silence. That silence said everything. "I haven't cheated," she finally said. I laughed softly. "Not physically, but don't insult me by pretending this is innocent." She looked away. "You don't understand what he gives me." That sentence hurt more than I expected. "What does he give you?" I asked. She hesitated. "Validation." I swallowed. "And what do I give you?" She didn't respond. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not explosively, but decisively. I sat back down and said, "You need to stop seeing him." Her eyes widened. "You can't tell me what to do. I can tell you what I'll accept in my marriage," I said. "And this isn't it." She scoffed. "So what? You're giving me an ultimatum?" "Yes," I said, "I am." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "I won't be second place in my own marriage." She walked away without answering, and that told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few days, she didn't stop seeing him. In fact, she stopped pretending. She told me when she was going out with him. She stopped apologizing for coming home late. She stopped hiding the smiles. And I stopped trying to convince her to care. Instead, I started preparing. I met with a lawyer during my lunch break. I didn't file anything. I just asked questions. What would custody look like? What would finances look like? What did separation actually mean? Walking out of that office, I felt sick, but also strangely clear-headed. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was thinking. The turning point came on a Saturday afternoon. Laura said she was going out for a bit. She dressed nicer than usual, took extra time with her hair. I asked where she was going. She didn't hesitate. Daniel's place. My chest tightened. Alone? Yes. I stared at her. You're crossing a line. She looked annoyed. You don't get to decide that, I said quietly. If you walk out that door, don't come back expecting things to be the same. She grabbed her keys. They already aren't, she said, and she left. She didn't come home that night. She texted around midnight, staying over. Don't wait up. That was it. No apology, no explanation, no concern for how that would land. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone in my hand, feeling something cold settle into place. This wasn't a warning sign anymore. This was betrayal. The next morning, I woke up before the kids. I made breakfast, packed lunches, acted like everything was normal, but inside, I was done pretending. Laura came home late in the morning, avoiding my eyes. I didn't yell, I didn't ask questions. I just said, "We're done." She froze. "What?" "I won't share my wife," I said, "and I won't raise my kids in a house where this is acceptable." She opened her mouth to argue. I held up my hand. "This isn't a conversation," I said. "It's a statement." She cried. She begged. She said she was confused, that she needed time, that she never meant to hurt me. I listened calmly, and for the first time, I didn't feel pulled back in because clarity had replaced hope. She ignored every red flag I warned her about, and now she was about to face the consequences she thought would never come. When I told Laura we were done, I expected anger, denial, defensiveness, maybe even blame. What I didn't expect was fear. Real, unfiltered fear, the kind that settles into someone's face when they realize the ground beneath them isn't as solid as they thought. She stood in the kitchen, still wearing the clothes she'd slept in at his place, her purse hanging loosely from her shoulder. "You don't mean that," she said quietly. "I do," I replied. She shook her head. "You're just upset. We can talk about this." "We've been talking for months," I said. "You stopped listening a long time ago." She sat down at the table like her legs had given out. "I never planned for this to happen," she said. "It just did." I leaned against the counter. "You didn't plan it. You chose it," repeatedly. She covered her face with her hands. "I didn't think it would go this far." "That's the problem," I said. "You never think about the end until you're standing in it." The kids came downstairs while we were still talking. Laura quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. I hated that how quickly she could switch modes. I said nothing in front of them. Not yet. That afternoon, I took them to the park. We kicked a soccer ball around, ate ice cream, laughed. They had no idea their lives were about to change, and that almost broke me. That evening, after they were in bed, I told Laura what separation would look like. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't threaten. I explained, "I'm not kicking you out," I said, "but I'm not sharing a bed with you anymore." She nodded slowly. "You can sleep in the guest room," I continued, "or stay elsewhere. That's your choice." She whispered, "And Daniel?" I looked at her. "That's also your choice. But understand this, if you continue seeing him, reconciliation is off the table." She looked torn. "You're asking me to give him up. I'm asking you to choose your family," I said. "Something you've been avoiding." She didn't answer that night. She packed a small bag and went to stay with a friend. Not Daniel. That detail mattered to me more than I expected. The next few days were strange. The house felt quieter, but clearer. I wasn't bracing myself for lies. I wasn't wondering where she was or who she was texting. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. Laura called every day, sometimes twice. She cried, she apologized, She said she'd made a mistake. She said Daniel wasn't what she thought. I listened, but I didn't reassure her because something else had changed too. My trust wasn't just cracked, it was gone. She asked to come home after a week. I'll sleep in the guest room, she said. I just want to be close to the kids. I agreed, but I set rules. No contact with Daniel. Complete transparency. Counseling individual first, together later. She agreed to everything immediately. Too quickly, that scared me. The first night she was back, she tried to talk. I miss you, she said softly. I know, I replied. I want us back. I don't know if that's possible. She cried again. I didn't comfort her. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that comforting her too soon would erase the seriousness of what she'd done. A few days later, the truth came out anyway. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't checking her phone. Daniel reached out to me. He sent a message on social media. I think we should talk. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I replied, okay. We met at a coffee shop. He was younger than me, confident, calm, too calm. He told me Laura had been conflicted, that he never meant to hurt anyone. I listened. Then I said, you knew she was married. He nodded. Yes. And you continued anyway. Yes. There was no shame in his voice. That told me everything. She told me you were distant, he added, unhappy. I leaned forward. And did that justify what you did? He hesitated. I thought she deserved happiness. I stood up. You don't get to define happiness for my family. I walked out. That night, I told Laura about the meeting. Her face went pale. He contacted you? She asked. Yes. She started crying again. I cut him off. I swear. I believed she had. But belief wasn't enough anymore. Something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer the woman I trusted blindly. And I was no longer the man willing to ignore red flags to keep the peace. We started counseling the following week. Not to save the marriage, but to see if it was even possible. And deep down, I already knew the answer. Counseling didn't start the way I expected. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting, no tears in the first session, just silence. Laura sat on one end of the couch, hands folded tightly in her lap. I sat on the other, feeling like a guest in a room that used to belong to both of us. The therapist asked a simple question. Why are you here? Laura answered immediately. I want to save my marriage. I waited. The therapist turned to me. And you? I took a breath. I want clarity. Laura flinched at that. Over the next few sessions, patterns started to emerge. Laura talked about feeling unseen, about craving validation, about how Daniel made her feel important. The therapist asked her, did you communicate those needs to your husband before the affair? Laura hesitated. Not really, she admitted. I felt a bitter sense of validation, but no satisfaction. At home, Laura tried hard. She cooked dinner, left notes, asked about my day, suggested family activities. On the surface, she was doing everything right, but something felt off. It wasn't that I didn't see her effort. It was that her effort came too late. One night, after the kids were asleep, she sat next to me on the couch. I know I don't deserve it, she said, but can you tell me if there's still a chance? I looked at her, really looked at her. I don't know, I said honestly, and that scares me. She nodded slowly. I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes. Wider in the better. I believe she meant it, but wanting to fix something doesn't mean it can be fixed. The real turning point came unexpectedly. A school event. Laura and I attended together for the first time since the separation. We sat side by side, polite but distant. One of the other parents leaned over to me and said, it's nice to see you two together. I smiled politely. Laura squeezed my hand, and instead of comfort, I felt pressure. It hit me all at once. Reconciliation wasn't just about us. It was about expectations, appearances, pretending, and I wasn't ready for that. Later that night, Laura said, did that feel good? Being there together? I shook my head. It felt like acting. She started crying again. I just want things to go back to normal. There is no normal anymore, I said gently. You changed it. A few days later, I got confirmation of something I already suspected. Daniel had tried to reach out to Laura again. She told me immediately. I didn't respond, she said quickly. I blocked him. I appreciated the honesty, but I also realized something important. The fact that he felt comfortable reaching out at all meant the door had never fully closed. And that door existed because of choices she'd made, not because of anything I failed to do. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about the kids, the house, the years we'd built, and I thought about trust. Trust isn't just believing someone won't hurt you again. It's feeling safe enough to stop watching for the knife. I wasn't there. I made a decision the following morning. I told Laura I needed space, not a break, not a pause, space to decide whether I wanted to keep living like this. She cried. She asked how long. I said, I don't know. That uncertainty broke her more than any argument could have. We told the kids together, carefully, gently. We said we were taking time to work things out. They asked if it was their fault. We said no. They asked if we still loved each other. We said yes. That part was true, just not enough. Laura moved out again, this time into a small apartment nearby. We coordinated schedules, shared custody. Life became structured, controlled, predictable, and oddly enough, calmer. Weeks passed. I started to feel something I hadn't expected. Relief. I wasn't constantly analyzing tone or behavior. I wasn't bracing for disappointment. I wasn't second-guessing my worth. And that scared me, because relief meant I might already be letting go. Laura noticed the distance. You're different, she said one afternoon during a handoff with the kids. So are you, I replied. She swallowed. I don't want to lose you. I looked at her and said the hardest truth I'd faced so far. You might have already. Time has a strange way of changing things. Not dramatically, not all at once. It just quietly rearranges what matters. Weeks turned into months. Laura and I settled into a routine that worked on paper. Shared calendars, calm handoffs, short, polite conversations that stayed focused on the kids. We were cooperative. We were respectful. We were no longer a couple. And that truth became harder for Laura to ignore the longer it lasted. She tried one last time to pull me back. It happened after a counseling session we'd agreed to attend together, mostly for closure. The therapist asked me, "Do you still love your wife?" I didn't answer right away. Laura leaned forward, hopeful. "I care about her," I said finally. "But love without trust isn't something I know how to live with." Laura's eyes filled with tears. After the session, she followed me to the parking lot. "Please," she said, her voice breaking, "tell me there's still something left." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt a deep sadness settle in. "There is," I said, "just not enough." That night, I sat alone in the house while the kids were with her. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. That's when I knew. If being alone felt better than being together, the answer was already there. Laura started talking about starting over, not reconciliation, reinvention. "People survive worse than this," she said during one conversation. "They come out stronger." I nodded. "Some do." "And us?" she asked. I said the truth she'd been avoiding. "Some don't." She asked if I'd ever forgive her. I thought about it carefully. "I think I could," I said. "But forgiveness isn't the same as staying." She looked confused. "What's the difference?" "Forgiveness is letting go of anger," I said. "Staying is trusting you with my future." She had no answer for that. The final shift happened quietly. No argument, no breakdown, just clarity. I realized I no longer wondered what she was doing when she wasn't with me. I no longer felt the urge to check in. I no longer imagined a future where things magically worked out. I was already grieving something that had ended. I met with my lawyer again. This time, I didn't ask questions. I gave instructions. When I told Laura, she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just nodded slowly, like she'd been expecting it. "I ruined us," she said. "Yes," I replied gently, "but I'm the one choosing how I move forward." She cried quietly. I let her. The kids took the news better than I feared. Not because it didn't hurt, but because they'd already felt the tension lift months ago. Kids notice everything. They just don't always say it. On my last night in the house before it officially went on the market, I walked through each room. Memories everywhere. But memories aren't promises. And love isn't enough when respect is gone. Laura hugged me before she left. "I really did love you," she said. "I know," I replied. And for the first time, I meant it without resentment. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel relieved. I felt resolved. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting to stay. It's knowing when to walk away. The divorce was finalized on a quiet Tuesday morning. No courtroom drama, no shouting, just paperwork, signatures, and a strange sense of finality that settled over everything once it was done. 12 years reduced to a few stamped pages. I expected to feel something bigger. Instead, I felt calm. Life after the divorce didn't suddenly become easy. There were lonely nights, missed routines, moments where I instinctively reached for my phone to tell Laura something about the kids, then remembered that wasn't my role anymore. But there was also honesty. For the first time in a long while, my life didn't require guesswork. I wasn't wondering where my partner was. I wasn't decoding tone or behavior. I wasn't competing with someone I couldn't see. That piece mattered more than I realized. Laura struggled at first. She told me once during a custody exchange, "I thought losing you would hurt. I didn't realize how empty it would feel. I nodded. Consequences usually arrive after the excitement fades. She didn't argue. She didn't need to. Daniel disappeared from her life completely. Not because I asked, not because I demanded, but because the fantasy couldn't survive real consequences. That part didn't make me feel better. It just confirmed what I already knew. The kids adjusted faster than we did. They adapted to 2 homes, 2 routines, 2 versions of normal. They laughed more. They argued less. And one night, my oldest said something that stayed with me. "Dad, you seem lighter." That was the moment I knew I'd made the right decision. People asked if I hated Laura. I didn't. Hate requires energy. What I felt instead was acceptance. She wasn't evil. She wasn't broken. She was human, and she made choices she didn't fully understand until they were permanent. So did I. Looking back, the affair wasn't the real ending. The real ending was when she ignored every red flag I raised. When she dismissed my concerns instead of addressing them. When she chose validation over accountability. When she convinced herself that boundaries were control and warnings were insecurity. That's where the marriage actually ended. The paperwork just made it official. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Love doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes when respect does. And trust doesn't shatter because of one mistake. It breaks when someone keeps walking forward after they've been warned where the cliff is. I don't regret trying. I don't regret giving chances. And I don't regret walking away when I finally understood that staying would cost me more than leaving ever could. Some lessons only come at the end of a long road. This was mine.